The building groaned like a dying animal, its steel bones twisting under the assault of flames that painted the Seoul night sky in shades of hell. Ifeoma didn't flinch as another window exploded above her, raining glass onto the street below. She'd seen worse, done worse. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency as she checked her oxygen mask one final time, her dark skin glistening with sweat under the flashing emergency lights that turned the world into a disorienting strobe of red and blue. "Third floor is clear," her partner Jung-ho shouted through the radio, his voice crackling with static and urgency. "Fourth floor heavy smoke. No survivors located yet." Ifeoma's jaw tightened. The building was a 12-story residential complex in Gangnam, one of those sleek modern structures that promised luxury and delivered nothing but false security when fire took hold. They'd evacuated 43 people so far. The manifest said there should be 46, 3 souls still trapped somewhere in that inferno, and the clock was ticking down with every second that passed. "I'm going to 5, Ifeoma said, her Nigerian accent still thick despite 3 years in Korea, each word clipped and determined. Something's not right about those readings. "Ifeoma, the structural integrity is compromised." Captain Park's voice cut through the channel, sharp with concern. "We need to pull back in 7 minutes regardless." Welcome to Seoul Africa Stories. Before we begin, take 1 second to like this video and subscribe. It truly helps the channel grow and allows us to bring you more powerful African stories. Also, tell us where you're watching from. Drop your country flag in the comments. 7 minutes. She could work with 7 minutes. She'd pulled a family of 5 from a collapsed factory in Lagos with less time than that, back when she was just starting out and didn't know enough to be properly afraid. Fear was useful, her first captain had told her, but only if you made it your passenger, never your driver. She pushed through the service entrance, the heat hitting her like a physical wall even through her gear. The 5th-floor hallway stretched before her, a tunnel of smoke so thick her flashlight beam barely penetrated 3 feet ahead. The floor was already beginning to buckle in places, tiles cracking and popping under her boots. Bad sign. Very bad sign. "Anybody here?" she called out, her voice muffled by the mask. "Fire department, call out if you can hear me." Nothing. Just the roar of flames consuming everything they touched, the crackle of burning paint, the groan of metal expanding beyond its tolerances. She moved methodically, checking each apartment, each potential hiding space. People did strange things in fires. She'd found victims in bathtubs, in closets, under beds. Panic made humans irrational, made them seek small spaces instead of exits, made them hide when they should run. She was about to turn back when she heard it. Faint, barely audible over the chaos of destruction. A cough, weak, rasping, but unmistakably human. "I hear you," Ifeoma shouted, moving toward the sound. "Keep making noise. Guide me to you." Another cough, stronger this time, coming from apartment 507. The door was ajar, smoke billowing out like a living thing. Ifeoma kicked it fully open, sweeping her light across the interior. Expensive furniture, minimalist decor, the kind of place that cost more per month than she made in 6. And there, collapsed beside an overturned wheelchair near the balcony door, was an elderly Korean woman in traditional hanbok, the silk fabric already beginning to char at the edges. "Found one," Ifeoma barked into her radio. "5th floor, apartment 507, elderly female, unconscious or semi-conscious. I'm bringing her out." She moved quickly, assessing as she went. The woman was breathing, but barely, her lips already taking on a bluish tint from smoke inhalation. Probably in her 70s, fragile looking, but with that particular type of wiriness that spoke of inner strength. There was something else too, something Ifeoma's instincts picked up on immediately. This wasn't some random resident. The apartment reeked of wealth, the kind of serious money that bought silence and privacy and security. "I've got you, grandmother," Ifeoma said softly in her limited Korean, knowing the woman probably couldn't hear her, but saying it anyway. "I'm taking you home." She'd just gotten the woman over her shoulder in a fireman's carry when the floor buckled. Not gradually, not with warning. 1 second it was solid, the next it was dropping away beneath her feet like a trapdoor to hell. Ifeoma's training kicked in before conscious thought could, her body twisting mid-fall to take the impact on her shoulder and back, protecting the elderly woman cradled against her chest. They crashed through to the apartment below, a tangle of broken ceiling tiles and shattered furniture and flames that were suddenly much, much closer. Pain exploded through Efeoma's left side, but she forced it down, forced everything down except the immediate need to move, to get out, to survive. The woman was stirring now, her eyes fluttering open, and Ifeoma saw the exact moment awareness returned. Saw the fear bloom across those delicate features, the panic that could kill them both if it took hold. "Look at me," Ifeoma commanded in English, her Korean failing her in the stress of the moment. She grabbed the woman's face gently but firmly, forcing eye contact. "Grandmother, look at me. I need you to stay calm. Can you do that?" The woman's eyes focused on her, and something strange happened. The panic didn't disappear exactly, but it was joined by something else. Recognition, maybe, though they'd never met. Trust, though Ifeoma hadn't earned it yet. The woman's trembling hand came up to grip Ifeoma's wrist, her touch surprisingly strong. "You came," the woman whispered in Korean, her voice barely audible. "The angel came." Ifeoma didn't waste time parsing that. She scanned their new surroundings, looking for options, for exits, for anything that would get them out of this death trap. The main door was blocked by fallen debris and active flames. The windows were reinforced glass, not easy to break and 5 stories up anyway. That left the service corridor if they could reach it, but it meant crawling through an obstacle course of burning furniture and collapsing ceiling. "Can you move?" Ifeoma asked, switching back to Korean. "Can you crawl?" The woman nodded, though Ifeoma could see the lie in her eyes. She was hurt, probably more than she realized, running on adrenaline and shock. But there wasn't time to argue, wasn't time for anything except action. "Stay low, right behind me," Ifeoma instructed. "Put your hand on my ankle and don't let go no matter what happens. Understand?" Another nod. Ifeoma dropped to her belly, feeling the woman's surprisingly firm grip on her boot, and started crawling. The smoke was worse down here, thick and black and toxic, each breath a calculated risk even through her mask. She could hear the woman coughing behind her, struggling, but that grip on her ankle never faltered. 6 feet, 10 feet. A ceiling beam crashed down inches to their left, sparks erupting like fireworks. Ifeoma heard the woman cry out, but that hand stayed locked on her ankle, trusting, determined. 12 feet. The service corridor door was visible now through the smoke, blessedly still intact, and Ifeoma felt a surge of hope that she immediately suppressed. Hope got you killed in fires. Only action mattered. Her oxygen alarm started beeping. 3 minutes of air left, maybe less. The woman behind her was making horrible, wet, gasping sounds, her lungs filling with smoke and particulates that would take months to heal if they survived at all. 15 feet. 20. Almost there. "Ifeoma, building integrity at 20%, Jungho's voice crackled through her radio. "Captain's calling full evacuation. You need to abort now." "Negative," Ifeoma grunted, reaching for the corridor door handle. "We're coming out. 30 seconds. She yanked the door open and immediately knew they were in trouble. The stairwell was fully engulfed, a vertical chimney of flame that rose up through the center of the building like something out of a nightmare. The structural fire had found the perfect conditions to spread, and it was spreading fast. "The elevator shaft," the woman croaked from behind her, surprising Ifeoma. "There's a maintenance ladder. My son, he showed me once in case of emergency." Ifeoma looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Blood trickled from a cut on the woman's temple. Her expensive hanbok was torn and burned, but her eyes were clear, sharp, undimmed by the smoke and fear. This was someone used to making decisions, someone accustomed to being heard. "Show me," Ifeoma said. The woman pointed with a shaking hand to a panel in the corridor wall that Ifeoma had taken for decoration. She pried it open with her gloved hands, revealing a narrow maintenance access shaft with a rusty ladder descending into darkness. It was barely wide enough for one person, would be a tight squeeze even for Ifeoma's athletic frame. For an elderly woman, injured and oxygen-deprived, it would be nearly impossible. "You first," Ifeoma said, making a decision. "I'll be right behind you." "I can't," the woman said simply. "My arms. I don't have the strength." Ifeoma's mind raced through options, through possibilities, through increasingly desperate scenarios. Her oxygen alarm was beeping more insistently now. 2 minutes, maybe less. Behind them, the fire was eating through the corridor door. In front of them, a 5-story climb down a maintenance shaft that might not even be structurally sound anymore. "Then we go together," Ifeoma decided. She stripped off her oxygen mask and pressed it to the woman's face. Breathe. Deep breaths. I'm going to tie us together and we're going to climb down side by side. Trust me. She used her safety line, looping it around both of them, creating a makeshift harness that would keep them connected. It wasn't standard procedure. It probably violated a dozen safety protocols. But standard procedure didn't account for elderly Korean women with fierce eyes and iron grips and a strange way of looking at Ifeoma like she was someone important, someone chosen. Ready? Ifeoma asked, and didn't wait for an answer. They descended into darkness, Ifeoma's strong arms doing the work for both of them, the woman's hands gripping the rungs with desperate determination. 4 stories. 3 stories. The metal was hot under their hands, almost too hot to hold. 2 stories. The woman was flagging now, her breathing ragged even with the oxygen mask. 1 story. They tumbled out of the ground floor access panel into the building lobby where firefighters rushed to meet them. Hands grabbed Ifeoma, pulled her away from the woman, and she fought them until she realized they were trying to help, to treat, to save. The grandmother, Ifeoma gasped, her lungs burning. Is she okay? Tell me she's okay. Someone pushed an oxygen mask over her face, and the world started coming back into focus. Paramedics were working on the elderly woman 20 feet away, their movements quick and professional. Alive then. Both of them alive when statistics said they should be dead. Captain Park appeared in front of her, his weathered face stern. That was incredibly reckless, Ginny Ifeoma. Yes, sir, Ifeoma said, too tired to argue. Also incredibly brave. Good work. He gripped her shoulder briefly, and that was all the recognition she'd get, all she needed. Outside, the Seoul night had returned to normal, or as normal as a major fire scene could be. News cameras were everywhere, reporters shouting questions, crowds of evacuated residents wrapped in blankets and shock. Ifeoma sat on the back bumper of an ambulance, letting a paramedic check her vitals, watching the building burn with professional detachment. She didn't notice the black Mercedes until it was too late. Didn't notice the way the crowd parted, the way conversations stopped mid-sentence, the way even the reporters suddenly found something else to focus on. She was focused on the elderly woman being loaded into an ambulance when a voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Where is my mother? Ifeoma looked up and found herself staring at possibly the most beautiful and simultaneously terrifying man she'd ever seen. He was tall for a Korean, maybe 6 feet, with sharp features that looked like they'd been carved rather than born. His suit probably cost more than her yearly salary. But it was his eyes that caught her, held her, cold, calculating. The eyes of someone who was used to problems and solutions, with no room for anything in between. Behind him stood 3 men in identical black suits, their postures screaming security, their hands resting on their hips in a way that suggested concealed weapons. This wasn't police. This wasn't normal. The man's gaze swept across the scene with the precision of a searchlight, dismissing firefighters, paramedics, reporters, everyone and everything, until it landed on Ifeoma and stopped. For a moment that stretched too long, they simply stared at each other. She saw him take in her soot-stained face, her burned gear, the way she was favoring her left side where she'd taken the fall. Saw something flicker across his features too quick to name before the cold mask slammed back into place. Now, friends, if you're enjoying this story so far, hit the like button and subscribe to Seoul Africa Stories. And don't forget to comment where you're tuning in from, your city or country. We love seeing our global family. You, he said, moving toward her with the kind of purposeful stride that made people scramble out of his path. You pulled someone from the 5th floor. Where is she? Ifeoma stood up despite the paramedics' protest, meeting this stranger's intensity with her own. She hadn't survived 3 years fighting fires in a country that still looked at her dark skin with curiosity and sometimes suspicion by backing down from intimidating men. The elderly woman is being transported to Seoul National Hospital, she said in careful Korean, aware that her accent was thicker when she was tired. She's stable but needs treatment for smoke inhalation and possible internal injuries. Take me to her, now. It wasn't a request. Ifeoma felt her jaw tighten, felt that familiar surge of stubbornness that her mother had always said would get her in trouble. The paramedics are doing their job. She's in good hands. The man stepped closer, close enough that she could smell expensive cologne mixed with something sharper underneath. Fear, maybe, carefully controlled but present. I don't think you understand who you're speaking to. I don't need to understand who you are, Ifeoma replied, holding her ground. I understand that your mother, if that's who she is, needs medical attention. Everything else is secondary. One of the security men moved forward, his hand definitely moving toward a weapon now, but the tall man held up a hand to stop him. Something changed in his expression, some subtle shift that Ifeoma couldn't quite read. Respect, maybe, or surprise, or simple recalculation of strategy. You're right, he said, and the admission seemed to cost him something. I apologize. It's been a difficult evening. He paused, his eyes scanning her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. She didn't. You saved her life. I did my job. Your job. He almost smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Most people would have died attempting what you just did. The building engineers are saying that fifth floor shouldn't have held weight for more than 90 seconds after you entered. You were up there for 4 minutes. Ifeoma shrugged, uncomfortable with the scrutiny. Time moves differently in fires. I need to see her, the man said, and this time it was a request, not a demand. Please, tell me which hospital, which ambulance. Before Ifeoma could answer, Captain Park appeared at her elbow. She saw him recognize the man immediately, saw the way her captain's spine stiffened, the way his whole demeanor shifted from authority figure to something more deferential. Mr. Kang. We didn't realize it was your mother in the building, Mr. Kang. The name clearly meant something to everyone around them. The other firefighters had stopped their work to watch. The reporters were suddenly very interested again. Though Ifeoma noticed they kept their distance, their cameras lowered. Even the paramedics seemed to move with more urgency now. Which hospital? Mr. Kang repeated, his attention still fixed on Ifeoma. Seoul National, Captain Park interjected quickly. Our best people are with her. I can arrange an escort if you'd like. That won't be necessary. Mr. Kang turned to one of his security men. Minho, bring the car. Then, unexpectedly, he looked back at Ifeoma. You should come too. I should what? Ifeoma couldn't hide her surprise. My mother will want to thank you. And you're injured. You need treatment. I'm fine. Just some bruising. You fell through a floor. It wasn't a question. Somehow he'd already pieced together what happened, probably from the same engineers who'd told him about the structural timing. You're not fine. You're running on adrenaline and training, but in an hour, you won't be able to move without serious pain. He gestured toward the approaching Mercedes. Please, it's the least I can offer. Ifeoma wanted to refuse. Everything about this man set off warning bells in her head. The way people reacted to him, the security detail, the expensive everything, the cold eyes that suggested he was used to getting exactly what he wanted. But he was right about the adrenaline, and she could already feel the crash coming, could already feel her left side starting to stiffen up. I'll follow in the fire department vehicle, she said finally. I need to file my incident report anyway. Something like frustration crossed his features, but he nodded. As you wish. He moved toward his car, then paused and looked back. What's your name? Jin Ifeoma, Firefighter, Station 12. Jin Ifeoma, he repeated, her Nigerian name sounding strange in his Korean pronunciation. Thank you for saving my mother's life. I am Kang Min-jae. Then he was gone, the Mercedes pulling away with the kind of smooth acceleration that spoke of serious horsepower under the hood. Captain Park let out a breath. Ifeoma hadn't realized he was holding. Do you have any idea who that was? He asked quietly. Apparently someone important, Ifeoma said, watching the car's taillights disappear into Seoul's traffic. Kang Min-jae. His family owns half of Gangnam. Real estate, construction, entertainment, import-export, you name it. There are rumors, of course, but no one talks about them openly. Captain Park looked at her seriously. Be careful, Jin. Men like that, they operate in worlds we don't understand. You did a good thing tonight. Saved a life. Don't let it become complicated. But as Ifeoma climbed into the fire department SUV for the ride to Seoul National Hospital, she had a sinking feeling that complicated was exactly what her life was about to become. The private wing of Seoul National Hospital was like no medical facility Ifeoma had ever seen. Marble floors, art on the walls that looked museum quality, ambient lighting that suggested spa more than hospital. She'd been treated in the emergency department first, her protests overruled by doctors who seemed to have received very specific instructions about her care. Bruised ribs, minor burns on her hands, smoke inhalation that warranted observation. Nothing serious, but they insisted on keeping her overnight. Now, showered and dressed in borrowed hospital clothes, her uniform sealed in an evidence bag for the investigation report, she stood outside room 1207, trying to decide if she should knock. The elderly woman, Mrs. Kang, had been asking for her, demanding to see her, according to the nurses, refusing treatment until she could speak with the angel who saved her. Angel. The word sat uncomfortably on Ifeoma's shoulders. She wasn't an angel. She was just someone who'd been trained to run toward danger when everyone else ran away. Are you going to stand there all night, or are you going to come in? The voice from inside the room was weak but clear, speaking Korean with the kind of educated accent that suggested private tutors and prestigious schools. Ifeoma pushed open the door. Mrs. Kang looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, IV lines running into both arms, oxygen cannula in her nose, monitors beeping softly around her. But her eyes were alert, tracking Ifeoma's movement across the room with an intensity that reminded her uncomfortably of her son. Grandmother, Ifeoma said respectfully, bowing in the Korean way she'd learned. I'm glad to see you're receiving good care. Sit, Mrs. Kang commanded, gesturing to the chair beside her bed. Come closer. My eyes aren't what they used to be. Ifeoma sat and found her hand immediately captured by Mrs. Kang's surprisingly strong grip. The older woman studied her face for a long moment, her expression unreadable. You're not Korean, Mrs. Kang said finally. No, grandmother. I'm from Nigeria. I've been in Seoul for 3 years now. Nigeria. Mrs. Kang pronounced it carefully, as if tasting the word. That's in Africa, yes? My late husband always wanted to visit Africa. He said it was where humanity began, where all our stories started. Her grip tightened slightly. You saved my life tonight. I did my job. No. The word was firm, allowing no argument. You risked your life. There is a difference. The firefighters outside told me what you did. The fall through the floor, the climb down the maintenance shaft. They said most of their own men wouldn't have attempted it. Her eyes searched Ifeoma's face. Why did you do it? Ifeoma considered the question carefully. It wasn't the first time someone had asked, but it felt more important somehow, coming from this woman. Because every life matters. Because you were someone's mother, someone's grandmother, someone's friend. Because I could. Mrs. Kang's eyes filled with tears, though none fell. My son was 8 years old when his father died, 23 years ago now. For 23 years, I have been waiting for someone to look at me and see a person, not a duty or an obligation or a burden to be managed. She squeezed Ifeoma's hand. Thank you. You're welcome, grandmother. My name is Kang Sun-mi. You may call me Omeonim if you wish. It means mother in Korean, a term of respect and affection. She smiled softly. Though I suppose that's rather forward of me, Slav. We've only just met. Before Ifeoma could respond, the door opened and Kang Min-jae strode in, still wearing his expensive suit, though it was now rumpled, his hair slightly mussed, as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. He stopped short when he saw Ifeoma sitting beside his mother's bed, their hands clasped together. Mother, he said carefully, you should be resting. I am resting, Sunmi replied with a hint of tartness. And visiting with my savior, Jin Ifeoma, this is my son, Kang Min-jae. Min-jae, this is the young woman who carried me through fire and darkness and brought me back to you. Min-jae's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. We've met at the scene. He looked at Ifeoma. I wasn't aware you'd been admitted as well. Just observation. I'll be released tomorrow. Ifeoma gently tried to extract her hand from Sunmi's grip, but the older woman held firm. Nonsense, Sunmi declared. You'll stay. Here, in this room. I won't sleep properly unless I know you're safe and being cared for. Mother, I'm sure Miss Jin has her own accommodations and responsibilities, Min-jae said, his tone carefully neutral. Then her responsibilities can wait a day. Can't they? Sunmi looked at Ifeoma with such hopeful expectation that Ifeoma felt something in her chest tighten. Grandmother, I don't think that's appropriate. You need rest, and I would just be in the way of the medical staff. Then we'll get a private nurse for the both of us. Min-jae, arrange it. It clearly wasn't a request. Sunmi's gaze turned steely, and Ifeoma could suddenly see where her son got his commanding presence from. I insist. Min-jae looked between them, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he nodded once, sharply. As you wish, Mother. I'll make the arrangements. He pulled out his phone and stepped into the hallway, already speaking rapid Korean to someone on the other end. Sunmi smiled triumphantly, then winced as the movement pulled at her injuries. Ifeoma immediately reached for the pain medication button. "Don't coddle me, child," Sunmi said, but her voice was weaker now. "I've survived 73 years, including tonight. A little pain won't kill me." "Neither will proper pain management," Ifeoma countered gently. "Please, grandmother, let the medicine work." Sunmi studied her again with those sharp eyes. "You're used to taking care of people." "I have 4 younger siblings back in Lagos," Ifeoma said. "I practically raised them while my mother worked 3 jobs. Taking care of people is second nature, I suppose." Are you resonating with this story? Subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let us know in the comments which country you're watching from. We're connecting Africa and the world, one story at a time. And yet, you became a firefighter, a dangerous profession. Your mother must worry. Afioma smiled slightly. Every day, according to her phone calls, but she understands. My father was a firefighter. He died when I was 15, saving a family trapped in a market fire. She paused, the old grief still there but manageable now, worn smooth by years. I became a firefighter to honor him, to continue what he started. Sunmi's expression softened with understanding. Then we are both women who have lost men to duty and service. My husband died protecting his business partners from a corporate attack. He was shot 3 times, but managed to warn them before he collapsed. She looked toward the window, toward the Seoul skyline glittering beyond. For years, I was angry at him for choosing them over me, over Min Jae. But I understand now. Some people are built to protect others. It's not a choice they make. It's who they are. Your son seems protective of you, Ifeoma observed carefully. Min Jae is protective of everything he considers his, Sunmi said, something complex in her tone. It's his blessing and his curse. His father raised him to be strong, to never show weakness, to always be the one in control. But strength without softness is just brittleness waiting to break. She squeezed Ifeoma's hand again. You have both. I could feel it when you carried me out. Strength to move forward, softness to keep me calm. Before Ifeoma could respond, Min Jae returned, his expression carefully blank. It's arranged. A private suite has been prepared adjacent to this room. Nurses will check on both of you hourly. I've also contacted your fire station to inform them you'll be unavailable for the next 24 hours due to medical observation. You didn't have to do that, Ifeoma said, uncomfortable with the level of interference in her life. My mother wants you here. Therefore, you will be here. Min Jae's tone suggested the matter was closed. I've also arranged for your belongings to be collected from your apartment and brought here, along with a change of clothes more appropriate than hospital garments. You went through my apartment? Ifeoma felt a spark of anger. I had someone collect necessities. Your address was in the fire department records. He said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world, this casual invasion of her privacy. Min Jae? Sunmi said sharply, You're being rude. Apologize. Something flickered across his face, surprise maybe at being publicly corrected. When was the last time someone had spoken to him like that, Ifeoma wondered. When was the last time someone had told Kang Min Jae he was wrong? I apologize, he said stiffly, looking at Ifeoma. I overstepped. I was trying to ensure your comfort, but I should have asked permission first. The apology sounded like it physically pained him. Ifeoma almost smiled despite herself. Thank you. And thank you for the arrangements, even if the method was questionable. Sunmi laughed, then coughed, and both Ifeoma and Min Jae moved simultaneously toward her. Their hands collided on the water cup beside the bed. Min Jae pulled back first, a strange expression crossing his features as he watched Ifeoma help his mother drink. You should go home, Min Jae, Sunmi said once she'd caught her breath. You've been here for hours. Get some rest. I'm staying, he said flatly. There's no need. I have Ifeoma with me. Mother, she's a stranger, a firefighter who happened to be doing her job. We don't know anything about her. The words stung more than Ifeoma wanted to admit. She kept her face carefully neutral, but Sunmi's eyes flashed with genuine anger. She saved my life, while you were in whatever meeting was more important than checking on your elderly mother. She carried me through fire and floors and climbed down 5 stories with me tied to her back. She has earned my trust in ways most people never will. Sunmi's voice was steel wrapped in silk. You will treat her with respect, Min Jae, or you will leave. The silence that followed was heavy. electric with unspoken tensions. Min-jae's jaw worked as if he were physically biting back words. Finally, he bowed stiffly to his mother. As you wish. He turned to Ifeoma, and she saw something new in his eyes now. Not quite respect, but recognition at least. An acknowledgement that she was more than just a convenient rescuer. Miss Jin, please forgive my rudeness. My mother's safety is paramount to me, and I spoke without thinking. It's understandable, Ifeoma said, meaning it. She'd seen enough families in crisis to know that fear often manifested as anger, suspicion, control. You're worried about her. That's natural. He nodded once, then looked back at his mother. I'll be in the waiting area if you need anything. Anything at all. After he left, Sunmi sagged back against her pillows, suddenly looking every one of her 73 years. That boy, she murmured. He thinks the whole world is a threat that needs to be managed. He loves you, Ifeoma said simply. That's clear. Yes, but love shouldn't feel like a cage. Sunmi closed her eyes. His father's death changed him, made him hard when he should have stayed soft, made him see enemies where there are only people trying to live their lives. Ifeoma said nothing, sensing that Sunmi needed to talk more than she needed responses. The older woman's breathing was evening out, the pain medication taking effect. When I saw you in that building, Sunmi continued, her voice drowsy now, I thought you were an angel. Did I tell you that? An angel come to take me to my husband. She smiled slightly. But you weren't taking me anywhere. You were bringing me back to light and air and life. Do you know what that means, child? What does it mean, grandmother? It means you gave me a second chance, and I don't intend to waste it. Sunmi's eyes opened, suddenly sharp again, despite the medication. Will you stay? Not just tonight, but after? My recovery will take weeks. The doctors say I need someone with me, someone to help me with daily activities, someone to keep me company. Min-jae will hire nurses, of course, but nurses aren't family. Nurses aren't friends. Ifeoma's heart sank. She'd been afraid of this, afraid of getting pulled into something that was none of her business. Grandmother, I have a job, responsibilities. I can't just abandon my life to become a live-in companion. I'm not asking you to abandon anything. I'm asking you to consider helping an old woman who has very few people in her life she truly trusts. Sunmi's grip on her hand tightened with surprising strength. I will pay you, of course, whatever salary you require, double your firefighter wages if necessary, and you wouldn't need to be here constantly. Just during the day, a few hours. Someone to talk to. Someone to remind me that the world has warmth in it still. I don't want your money, grandmother. Then don't think of it as payment. Think of it as compensation for your time. Sunmi's eyes were pleading now. Please, Ifeoma. I know we've just met. I know I have no right to ask this of you. But when you held my hand in that burning building, when you told me to stay calm and trust you, something in me recognized something in you. Call it foolish. Call it the ramblings of an old woman who nearly died. But I feel safer with you near than I have felt in years. Ifeoma closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the request, the implications of saying yes. Her life was already complicated enough without adding a wealthy Korean family and their problems to the mix. But she thought about her own mother, working 3 jobs, aging alone in Lagos because all her children had scattered across the world seeking better opportunities. She thought about what it meant to be old and vulnerable and surrounded by people who saw you as a duty rather than a person. I'll think about it, she said finally. Give me the night to consider, to talk to my captain and see what's possible. Sunmi smiled, satisfied with that much at least. That's all I ask. Now, you should rest too. You've been through as much as I have tonight. A nurse arrived then to check Sunmi's vitals and adjust her medications. Ifeoma took the opportunity to retreat to the adjacent suite that had been prepared for her. It was obscenely luxurious for a hospital room, with a full bedroom, sitting area, and private bathroom. Her belongings had indeed been delivered, sitting in neat bags on the dresser, and she felt another flicker of irritation at Min-jae's presumption. But when she opened the bags, she had to admit that whoever he'd sent had been thoughtful. Clean clothes, toiletries, her phone charger, even the book she'd been reading on her nightstand. Nothing invasive, just necessities collected with surprising care. She showered, letting the hot water ease her bruised muscles, then collapsed onto the hospital bed that was more comfortable than her own mattress at home. Sleep should have come easily. She'd been awake for almost 20 hours, had fought a major fire, had fallen through a floor, and climbed down 5 stories. Her body was screaming for rest. But her mind wouldn't stop turning over the day's events. The fire, the rescue, Sunmi's request, and woven through it all, the enigmatic presence of Kang Min-jae, with his cold eyes and careful control, and that momentary flash of something vulnerable when he'd thought his mother might die. Her phone buzzed, a message from Captain Park. Administrative leave approved for medical recovery. Take the time you need. You earned it. Another message from her mother in Lagos. I saw the news about the fire in Seoul. Tell me you weren't involved. Tell me you're safe. Ifeoma typed back quickly. I'm safe, Mama. Just some bruises. I saved someone tonight. An elderly woman. She reminds me of you. The response came almost immediately. Then you did good work, my daughter. Your father would be proud. Ifeoma stared at those words for a long time, feeling the familiar ache of loss mixed with purpose. Her father had died saving strangers. She'd nearly died tonight saving a woman she didn't know. Was this her destiny, to follow in those footsteps? Or was there supposed to be more, something beyond the endless cycle of fire and rescue and risk? She must have dozed off eventually because she woke to the sound of raised voices coming from Sunmi's room. Not quite shouting, but definitely arguing, the words sharp and rapid in Korean. She recognized Min-jae's voice and his mother's, though she couldn't make out the specifics. Ifeoma debated interfering, but the medical monitoring would alert nurses if anything was physically wrong. Family arguments were none of her business. She was trying to settle back into sleep when her door opened and Min-jae stepped inside, then froze when he saw she was awake. I apologize, he said stiffly. I didn't mean to disturb you. Is your mother all right? She's fine. We were just discussing her recovery plan. He moved further into the room, and Ifeoma noticed he'd removed his suit jacket, his white shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal surprisingly muscular forearms. She told me about her request, that she asked you to help with her recovery. I haven't decided yet. I think you should say no. The words were blunt, almost harsh. Ifeoma sat up, suddenly more awake. That's not your decision to make. No, but I'm trying to spare you from making a mistake. Min-jae's expression was unreadable in the dim light from the hallway. My family is complicated, Miss Jin. My mother is a kind woman, but her world is not a safe one. There are reasons we live the way we do, reasons we have security, reasons we maintain distance from most people. Are you threatening me? Ifeoma asked quietly. I'm warning you. He moved closer, and she could see the tension in his shoulders, the weariness around his eyes. My mother sees goodness in you. I can see it too, but goodness doesn't protect you from the realities of our life. People will use you to get to her, to get to me. They will see you as a weakness to exploit. Then maybe you should trust your mother to make her own decisions about who she spends time with. Ifeoma held his gaze steadily. She's a grown woman who survived a fire tonight. I think she can handle deciding who her friends are. Something like frustration crossed his features. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. Stop talking in vague warnings and tell me plainly what you're so afraid of. For a moment, she thought he might actually do it, might actually open up and explain whatever shadows haunted him. But the moment passed, the walls came back up, and he was once again the cold, controlled man who'd arrived at the fire scene. Just be careful, he said finally. That's all I'm asking. If you decide to help my mother, be aware that you're entering a world you don't understand, and once you're in, getting out again may not be simple. He left before she could respond, the door closing softly behind him. Ifeoma lay back down, her mind racing even faster now. What exactly had she stumbled into? What kind of family required security details and lived in private hospital wings and spoke in veiled warnings about danger? The smart thing would be to refuse Sunmi's request, to walk away tomorrow and never look back. Go back to her small apartment, her firefighter shifts, her simple if dangerous life. But when had Ifeoma ever taken the smart path? When had she ever walked away from someone who needed help? She thought about Sunmi's hand gripping hers in the burning building, thought about the way the older woman had looked at her with such hope, such unexpected connection, thought about her own mother, growing old alone across the ocean, and how she would want someone to show her that kind of compassion if their positions were reversed. By the time dawn broke over Seoul, painting the hospital room in shades of gold and pink, Ifeoma had made her decision. She showered again, dressed in the clean clothes that had been brought for her, and made her way to Sunmi's room. The older woman was awake, sitting up in bed with a breakfast tray that she'd barely touched. Her face lit up when she saw Ifeoma. "You came," Sunmi said with such genuine pleasure that Ifeoma felt her remaining doubts dissolve. "I came," Ifeoma agreed. She pulled up the chair beside the bed. "And I've thought about your request." Sunmi's hands stilled on the blanket. "And I'll help you during your recovery. Not for money, grandmother, for companionship, because I think we could be good friends, and because you remind me of my own mother, who I miss very much." Ifeoma paused. "But I have conditions." "Name them." "I continue my work as a firefighter. I'm on medical leave for the next week anyway, but after that I return to my regular shifts. I can visit you on my days off and in the evenings after work." "Acceptable," Sunmi said immediately. "Second, if at any point this arrangement becomes uncomfortable for either of us, we can end it without hard feelings. No obligations beyond basic human kindness." "Agreed." "And third," Ifeoma looked directly at Sunmi, "you tell me the truth about your family, about why your son has armed security, about what dangers he was warning me about last night." Sunmi's expression grew complex, layers of emotion passing across her delicate features. "That's a conversation that requires time and tea and honesty that may frighten you. I'm not easily frightened, grandmother. I walk into burning buildings for a living." A smile touched Sunmi's lips. "Yes, you do. Very well. Help me to the sitting area, and I'll tell you things I haven't spoken of in years." Ifeoma helped Sunmi from the bed, supporting her weight as they moved slowly to the cushioned chairs by the window. The older woman settled with a small sigh of relief, and Ifeoma poured tea from the service that had been left on the side table. "My late husband, Kang Jin-ho, was a brilliant businessman," Sunmi began, her voice taking on the cadence of storytelling. "He built an empire from nothing, starting with a single construction contract and expanding into real estate, import-export, entertainment. But Seoul in those days was different than now. To succeed, especially to succeed as spectacularly as Jin-ho did, you needed more than business acumen. You needed protection. You needed connections." "What kind of connections?" Ifeoma asked, though she was beginning to understand. "The kind that operate in shadows, the kind that blur the lines between legal and illegal, between business and something more dangerous." Sunmi sipped her tea carefully. "Jin-ho never hurt anyone. I need you to understand that. He was a good man, a kind man. But the people he associated with, the networks he relied on to protect his business and his family, they were not all good men." "Your husband was involved with organized crime." "My husband was involved with survival," Sunmi corrected gently. "In the Seoul of 30 years ago, there was no clean way to build what he built. The legitimate businessmen were all connected to politicians, and the politicians were all connected to criminal organizations. Jin-ho chose which devils to dance with carefully, and he tried to minimize the damage. But yes, to answer your question directly, he had ties to what some would call the Korean Mafia." Ifeoma absorbed this, turning the information over in her mind. "And your son inherited those connections when your husband died. Min-jae inherited everything. The business, the obligations, the enemies, the alliances. He was 25 years old and suddenly responsible for an empire that required constant vigilance to maintain." Sunmi's eyes grew distant. It changed him. The boy who loved art and music and literature became a man who sees every interaction as a potential threat, every relationship as a possible betrayal. "Is he involved in illegal activities?" "That's a question you should ask him, not me," Sunmi said. "What I can tell you is that Min-jae has worked very hard to legitimize our family's businesses, to separate from the old networks, to operate cleanly. But some connections can't be easily severed. Some debts can't be simply paid and forgotten. He walks a difficult line between the world his father left him and the world he wants to build." Ifeoma was quiet for a long moment, watching the morning traffic move through the streets far below. "Your son is right. I don't understand your world. I don't know what I'm getting myself into." "Then don't," Sunmi said simply. "Walk away now, before you're any more involved. I'll understand. You owe me nothing beyond the life you already saved." But even as Sunmi said it, even as she offered the exit, Ifeoma knew she wouldn't take it, couldn't take it. Something about this woman, about her loneliness wrapped in luxury, about her desire for simple human connection, called to something deep in Ifeoma's soul. "I'm staying," Ifeoma said, "but I need you to promise me something, grandmother. Anything. If there's ever real danger, if my presence here puts you or anyone else at risk, you tell me immediately. No protecting me from information I need to stay safe." Sunmi reached out and took Ifeoma's hand. "I promise. And Ifeoma, thank you. You have no idea what this means to me." They sat together in comfortable silence as Sol woke up around them, two women from completely different worlds, finding unexpected common ground in the aftermath of fire and rescue and near death. The next week passed in a strange sort of domesticity. Ifeoma spent her days with Sunmi, first at the hospital and then at the Kang family mansion when Sunmi was released. The house was everything Ifeoma had expected, and nothing like it at the same time. Yes, it was massive, expensive, filled with artwork and antiques that probably cost more than Ifeoma would earn in her lifetime. But it was also cold, sterile, more like a museum than a home. "No one lives here," Sunmi said sadly, as Ifeoma helped her settle into her bedroom suite. "Min-jae comes and goes, but he doesn't really live. The staff maintains everything perfectly, but they don't make it warm. It's been like this since Jinho died." Over the following days, that began to change. Ifeoma couldn't help herself. She opened curtains that had been closed for years, letting sunlight flood into dusty corners. She rearranged furniture to make conversation areas more intimate. She even, with Sunmi's delighted approval, added small touches of color. Fresh flowers in the main sitting room. Bright cushions on the austere leather couches. Photographs of Sunmi and her late husband brought out of storage and displayed with pride. The household staff watched these changes with a mixture of confusion and cautious approval. The housekeeper, Mrs. Han, was particularly resistant at first. "This is not how things are done in this house," she said stiffly when she found Ifeoma moving a valuable Ming Dynasty vase to make room for a simple vase of sunflowers. "Then perhaps it's time things were done differently," Ifeoma replied pleasantly. "Madame Sunmi requested the flowers. She says they remind her of her childhood." Mrs. Han couldn't argue with Sunmi's wishes, so she retreated into silent disapproval. But Ifeoma noticed that the flowers were carefully watered and maintained, and that slowly, very slowly, the housekeeper's stern expression began to soften when she saw how much happier Sunmi seemed. Min-jae was a different story. He came home late most nights, left early most mornings, and seemed determined to maintain as much distance as possible from Ifeoma. When they did cross paths, he was polite but cold, answering her greetings with brief nods, refusing to engage in anything beyond the most basic conversation. Until the evening, Ifeoma found Sunmi struggling to breathe in the garden. She'd helped the older woman outside after dinner for some fresh air, had settled her on a cushioned bench near the koi pond, and had gone back inside briefly to fetch a blanket as the evening was growing cool. When she returned 5 minutes later, Sunmi was gasping, her face pale, one hand clutched to her chest. "Grandmother." Ifeoma dropped the blanket and ran to her side. "What's wrong? What hurts?" "Can't breathe," Sunmi wheezed. "Chest tight." Ifeoma's training kicked in immediately. She checked Sunmi's pulse, fast and irregular, checked her breathing, shallow and labored. Heart attack, possibly, or panic attack, or complications from the smoke inhalation. Whatever it was, they needed help now. She pulled out her phone and dialed emergency services even as she helped Sunmi lie back on the bench, elevating her feet slightly. "Ambulance to the Kang residence, Gangnam District. Elderly female, 73, difficulty breathing, chest pain, possible cardiac event." The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional, asking questions Ifeoma answered automatically while never taking her attention from Sunmi. The older woman's eyes were wide with fear, her breathing getting worse, not better, and Ifeoma recognized the signs of panic compounding the physical symptoms. "Look at me, grandmother," Ifeoma said firmly, holding Sunmi's face gently. "Look at me and match my breathing. In through your nose, slow count of 4. Hold for 4, out through your mouth for 4. Can you do that with me?" Sunmi tried, her breathing stuttering and uneven, but Ifeoma kept coaching, kept demonstrating, her own calm lending strength. Slowly, gradually, Sunmi's breathing began to even out, the panic receding enough for her to focus. "That's it," Ifeoma encouraged. "You're doing so well. The ambulance is coming. Just keep breathing with me." That's how Min-jae found them when he came running from the house, Mrs. Han's panicked call having reached him at his office downtown. He took in the scene with one sweeping glance, his face going absolutely white. Mother, he said, dropping to his knees beside them. What happened? Possible cardiac event, Afioma said calmly, still monitoring Sunmi's pulse. I've called emergency services. They'll be here in less than 3 minutes. Minjae's hands were shaking as he reached for his mother, and Afioma saw genuine terror in his eyes, all his careful control stripped away. Don't leave me, he said to Sunmi, his voice breaking. Please, mother, don't leave me. Not going anywhere, Sunmi managed, and even smiled slightly. Stop being dramatic. The ambulance arrived with impressive speed, and Ifioma stepped back to let the paramedics work. They confirmed her initial assessment, non-critical but serious, requiring immediate hospital evaluation. As they loaded Sunmi onto a stretcher, the older woman reached out and grabbed both Ifioma's hand and Minjae's, pulling them close. Together, she said firmly. You both, come with me. Together. In the ambulance, cramped in the small space, Ifioma found herself pressed against Minjae's side as they both monitored Sunmi. She could feel the tension radiating from him, could see his jaw clenched so tight she worried he might crack a tooth. She's going to be okay, Ifioma said quietly. Her vitals are stabilizing. I think it was a panic attack more than a heart attack, probably triggered by residual trauma from the fire. But she's strong, Minjae. She'll get through this. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something crack in his expression. You called me Minjae, not Mr. Kang. Your mother was in distress. Formality seemed less important than connection. Ifeoma held his gaze. Was that inappropriate? No, he said softly. No, it was. He trailed off, his attention drawn back to Sunmi as she stirred. But his hand found Ifeoma's in the small space, and squeezed once briefly in what might have been gratitude or might have been something more. Then he let go, and the moment passed, leaving Ifeoma wondering if she'd imagined the whole thing. At the hospital, it was confirmed that Sunmi had experienced a severe panic attack, complicated by residual lung inflammation from the fire. Not life-threatening, but serious enough to require overnight observation and a new medication regimen to help with anxiety. I've never had panic attacks before, Sunmi said, frustrated and embarrassed. I survived my husband's death, survived raising Minjae alone, survived 73 years of life. Why now? Trauma doesn't follow a schedule, grandmother, Ifeoma said gently. You nearly died. Your body and mind are processing that in their own time. There's no shame in it. Minjae had been silent through most of the examination and diagnosis, standing in the corner of the hospital room like a statue. But now he moved forward, sitting on the edge of his mother's bed with uncharacteristic gentleness. You're staying here tonight, he said. Both of you. Ifeoma in the room next door, like before. I won't have either of you alone. I'm fine to go home, Ifeoma protested. I wasn't the one who had a panic attack. You caught it. You called for help. You kept her calm until the paramedics arrived. Minjae's eyes met hers across Sunmi's bed. You saved her life. Again. So please, for my peace of mind if nothing else, stay where I know you're both safe and cared for. It wasn't quite a request and wasn't quite an order. Something in between. Ifeoma found herself nodding before she'd consciously decided to agree. Good, Minjae said, and some of the terrible tension finally left his shoulders. Thank you. After Sunmi was settled and sleeping, Ifeoma retreated to the adjacent room that was becoming oddly familiar. She was just changing into the borrowed pajamas that had appeared with her belongings when there was a soft knock on her door. Minjae stood in the hallway, still in his business clothes, but with his tie loosened and his hair mussed from running his hands through it too many times. He looked exhausted, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen him. I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. I've been cold to you, distant, deliberately unwelcoming. You were protecting your mother. I understood. No, you didn't. Not really. He leaned against the doorframe, his eyes distant. I was protecting myself from having to acknowledge that you're exactly what my mother needs, that you're bringing life back to a house that's been dead for 20 years, that you're... He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. That you're the first person in a very long time who's made me want to be something other than what I am. Ifeoma's breath caught. Minjae. I don't know how to do this, he continued, his voice raw. How to let someone in. How to trust. how to be anything except the person my father's death required me to become. But watching you with my mother, seeing how you care for her without expecting anything in return, seeing how you've softened a house that's been hard for so long. He met her eyes. You make me want to remember what it was like before the responsibility and the danger and the endless vigilance. You make me want to be human again. The confession hung between them, intimate and terrifying. Ifeoma didn't know what to say, didn't know how to respond to such raw honesty from a man who seemed built from stone and ice. I'm not looking for anything from you, she said finally. I'm here for your mother, because I care about her, and because I think we can help each other through our respective traumas. I know, Minjae said, and that's what makes it worse. If you wanted something from me, from our family, I'd know how to handle it. I'd know how to keep you at arm's length, how to protect myself. But you just exist, warm and kind and competent, and somehow that's more dangerous than any threat I've ever faced. He pushed off from the doorframe, his expression closing down again as the walls came back up. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said any of that. It's late, and it's been a difficult day. Good night, Ifeoma. He was gone before she could respond, leaving her standing in the doorway of the hospital room, her heart racing, her mind spinning with implications she wasn't ready to consider. What had she gotten herself into? What was happening between her and this complicated, damaged man who looked at her like she was simultaneously his salvation and his doom? And why, despite all the warnings and all the danger and all the reasons this was a terrible idea, did some part of her want to chase after him and tell him that maybe, just maybe, being dangerous wasn't always a bad thing? She closed the door softly and leaned against it, her hand pressing against her chest where her heart was still racing. Outside, Seoul glittered in the darkness, a city of millions of stories intersecting and diverging in patterns too complex to predict. And somewhere in that vast urban maze, two lives from completely different worlds had collided in fire and smoke and unexpected connection, setting into motion something that neither of them fully understood, but both of them, in their own ways, desperately needed. Thank you for watching Seoul Africa Stories. Before you go, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a powerful story. And once again, drop your country or flag in the comments. We love hearing from our worldwide community. See you in the next story.